Hello, my name is Reverend Mike, and I'm here to answer your questions about religion. Today's topic, was there a great flood? Our knowledge of the flood comes primarily from Genesis chapters 6 through 9. It begins with the sons of God, the angels, seeing the daughters of men and finding them fair, and taking them as wives. The chapter continues on referencing their offspring, the giants, the Nephilim. According to the Bible, the Nephilim, combined with the wickedness of mankind, caused God to punish humanity with the great flood. In chapter 16, verse 17, "And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh." This verse sounds a lot like a global catastrophe, but that's because we're looking at the English translation. Remember, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. The word earth is actually eretz, meaning to be firm. The earth at large, or partitively, a land. It can mean a country or some division thereof. Genesis 7:17. "And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth," better translated as above the fields. "And the waters prevailed and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered." 15 cubits is somewhere between 22 feet, that's almost 7 meters, and 30 feet, or 9 meters, not nearly high enough to submerge a mountain. Even if we interpret this as 22 feet above the hills, it still isn't high enough to cover all the mountains of the globe. The word here is har, which can mean a mountain or a range of hills. Chapter 8 states the waters abated after 150 days. God commanded Noah to build an ark 300 cubits long. Depending on which version of the cubit you use, that's either 450 feet, about 135 meters, or 600 feet, 180 meters. Atheists say that a ship that size could not carry all life on the earth on board, and they're right. But if the flood only covered the known world, a certain region, a country, the region around the area where Noah lived, then the animals and the people that needed to be saved would be far less. They would fit on an ark that size. Something that most people skip over is that in addition to 2 of every animal, Noah was to take 7 of every clean animal. He was to take extra of livestock and animals that were good to eat. References to clean animals, which were not described until Leviticus, indicates that the Genesis flood tale was written down from older oral traditions after the Levitical food laws had been established. That's right, the flood story was written down generations after it happened. This is one of the reasons why there are older flood stories. The Mesopotamian flood story and their version of the Tower of Babel predates the oldest copies of the Old Testament by 1 to 2 millennia. I believe both stories have the same origin, to be about the same events, but the Sumerian account was told from a polytheistic point of view, multiple gods, and the Hebrew version was passed down through the generations, told from a monotheistic point of view, just one God. What historical events that we know of could be the basis of the Great Flood? How could the ark be washed up on the mountains of Ararat when the Bible says the flood waters were only 15 cubits? Once again, the word is har, which is better translated as hills. And Ararat is a region of Armenia. So the Bible actually says that the ark came to rest on the hills of Armenia. In the older Mesopotamian epics, the ark came to rest in the hilly land of Nasir. They reference making a sacrifice atop the mountain, but it is more properly translated atop the hilly ziggurat. Probably the ziggurat in Eridu on the southern branch of the Euphrates. The Euphrates River originates in the Armenian plateaus in the region of Ararat, the biblical location for the ark, and flows right by what is thought to be the location of the ark in the Mesopotamian legend. A massive flood could drive the ark up the Euphrates without having to cover the mountains. This also explains why some old cultures do not have a flood story. It was not global. It was very likely very widespread, but not global. As stated earlier, the Mesopotamian stories were written down long before the biblical one, so we know the story is far older than we thought. Because of this, some of the scientific evidence for ancient floods begin to line up with these religious stories. We're going to go back to eras of history far older than the accepted religious age for the Earth. Watch my video, Does the Bible Contradict Science?, to see my biblical evidence for an older Earth. According to science, about 13,000 years ago, toward the end of the last ice age, the massive ice sheet that spread across the upper half of North America began to recede. There is also evidence of a huge comet impact near Michigan at this time that would have caused massive and rapid ice melt, potentially creating a gigantic inland sea. Ancient Pleistocene lakes like Bonneville and Missoula also began to catastrophically flood the Pacific Northwest area of the United States at around this time as well. These combined flood events were so devastating that they altered ocean currents. Genesis refers to the flood coming from the fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven. Not only could this refer to a prolonged rainstorm, but also the terrible deluges from the rapid melt of the continental ice sheet. Sea levels rose 400 feet, that's 120 meters, after the end of the Ice Age. So most of the cities in biblical times were probably under hundreds of feet of water. That is also why no one has been able to definitively find the location of the Garden of Eden. It is very likely submerged beneath the Persian Gulf. The scientific estimate for sea level rise is easily within our 15 cubits above the hills passage in the Bible, and the surge from such a massive event could have driven an ark up the Euphrates River, just as ancient religious texts claimed. About 9,400 years ago, there was another flood near the Holy Land. The Mediterranean flooded the area of the Black Sea, and it would have been devastating to the communities in the area. Many scientists believe that this was Noah's flood, and they could be right, but I believe it merely reminded the people of the far older and more catastrophic disasters. But this event may have inspired our ancestors to begin to write down the ancient oral traditions of older floods, attempting to reassure the survivors that God would not destroy the region by flood again. That's about it for this subject. Thank you for watching the video. Please click like or dislike. Subscribe if you want to see more. Feel free to leave a comment or question below. Who knows, your question could become the subject of a future video. Be good to each other. We're all in this together.